In this video, I'm going to show you how to open up a pattern as well as add a seam allowance. In industry, the companies do not place a pattern piece on the fold. You may have done that in your apparel construction class, but it is rarely used again in an industrial setting. It would cause some confusion for the cutters. They may cut a piece in half if it wasn't, it was instructed to be placed on a fold or not. So all the pieces are opened up. So I'm going to show you that, and then I'm going to show you how to create seam allowances, which you will actually like. So the first thing is to take your piece. So I'm going to have the front and the back, and I'm going to have you open up both of the front and the back pieces. And you're going to select the center back. Again, needs to be in clockwise fashion. So select from the center back waist to the hem. Then you're going to go up to the icon that says set half. So you click on set half, and you will see little red dashed lines that are sticking out of the end of the pattern. And then you can open the half. Now, what that would do is that open half treats this totally as an open piece. So if I wanted to create an asymmetrical design, open half is a good option. But most of you don't want to have an asymmetrical design. You want your right and left side to be the same. So I'm going to select undo, and I'm going to choose, instead of open half, view half. So what view half is it is a mirror image. So whatever I do to the right will happen on the left. Open half, asymmetrical designs. View half is for symmetrical designs. So now I'm going to go to my front, and I'm going to do the same thing. Select from the center front waist down to the hem, and I'm going to do view half. Excuse me, I'm going to do set half, then view half. So you should have a back and a front in which the pieces are open. When you sew this to fit your dress form, you're going to just sew one of the side seams closed. So it's going to be completely closed. And the other side seam, you're going to sew from the notch, or where the zipper is, down to the hem. And then get it onto your dress form. Remember to leave enough space so that you can get it over the dress form body, or over her head. So 8 inches from the waist should be plenty. Now we're going to add seam allowances. So it can be kind of confusing to look at the different sizes here for seam allowances. And I'm going to just not see my different seam allowances here. And just by clicking, they're not showing. They're there, but they're not showing. So now I'm going to show you seam allowances. I have clicked off of all of the graded sizes, so there's not a check mark. Check mark just views it, because it can be kind of confusing to show a seam allowance, and as well as all the grading. I'll show you that at the end, that it is confusing. So I'm going to use a function that just looks like a sewing machine. I click once on the sewing machine. I click on any grade point, and then it's just telling me my seam info. So I'm just going to type in a 1/2 inch for my seam. Now before I close this, I'm going to just kind of explain start point, end point, and all of these little edges. These edges are basically not needed for a skirt, but what it is that sometimes when you have a pattern piece that's split apart in a number of places, that it creates quite a point in the seam allowance, and you don't want that. So you'll just kind of play around with these different start and end points, and whether you want to fold the seam allowance or not. So when we get to something like that, such as a flare hem, I'll show you how to change that seam allowance. So we're going to go ahead and click on apply and close. And then I want to see my seam allowance. So there's one where we're doing and the other that we're seeing. So show hide seam. So now I can see the seam allowance. So I'm going to do the same thing to the back. And again, I'm going to put in 0.5 or ½ inch, which is standard for a woven garment. And you'll see again, my seam allowance here. And then there's one more step. On this pattern, as you see it, the pattern is showing a solid line on the inside and a dashed line on the outside. So that you see it, let me zoom in right here. Solid line inside, dashed line outside. We actually want this in reverse. The solid line is the line that the cutter is going to cut on. So if he were to cut out this pattern, he's actually just going to cut off the seam allowances because they do not pay attention to dashed lines. They only pay attention to a solid line. So I need to go to one more function to make sure that my cutting line is on the outside. If I go to seam, and I say switch all to cut in the cut line, you'll see that my dash line is now on the inside and the solid line on the outside. That's the way I want it. And even though you are going to be doing your own cutting, I want to see that dash line on the inside and the solid line on the outside for the files that you submit. That again, a cutter will actually cut off the seam allowance if you don't cut it correctly or indicate that correctly. So here's my two pieces. Again, we have both the front and the back that are open here. Just an ease of sewing so that you sew one complete side seam, you sew the other side seam up to the notch and leave it open above what would be the zipper so that you can put it on your dress form.